Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering that one country has quietly become one of the biggest economic success stories on Earth. Not the United States, not China, not India, but a country that, only a few decades ago, was still struggling to recover from war, poverty, and isolation. Today, that same country is attracting billions of dollars from the world's biggest companies. Massive factories are appearing almost overnight. New highways stretch across the landscape. Entire cities are transforming faster than most people can keep up with. And here's the strange part. Most people haven't even noticed. While headlines are filled with discussions about China's slowing economy, Europe's energy crisis, and America's growing debt, another nation has been quietly climbing the economic ladder. Some economists believe this country could become one of Asia's next economic giants. Others think its success is built on a foundation that could crack at any moment, because behind the impressive growth lies a question almost nobody is asking. Who is actually getting rich? The country or the foreign companies investing there? The answer might completely change how you see this economic miracle. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why this country's greatest strength could also become its biggest weakness. This is the story of Vietnam. Chapter 1: From War to Economic Miracle. Today, Vietnam is one of the fastest growing economies in the world. But if you had visited the country just a few decades ago, you would have seen a completely different picture. For much of the 20th century, Vietnam was defined by conflict. Decades of war left its infrastructure in ruins, millions of people displaced, and the economy devastated. When the fighting finally ended in 1975, the country faced an enormous challenge: rebuilding almost everything from scratch. Instead of embracing a market economy, Vietnam adopted a centrally planned economic system. The government controlled prices, production, and trade. Private businesses had little room to grow, and foreign investment was practically non-existent. On paper, the system promised equality. In reality, it created shortages, inefficiency, and stagnation. Food production struggled to meet demand. Factories lacked modern equipment. Inflation soared. Many Vietnamese families found it difficult to obtain even basic necessities. By the mid-1980s, it had become clear that something had to change. And then came a decision that would alter the country's future forever. In 1986, Vietnam introduced a series of economic reforms known as Doi Moi, which translates to renovation. At first glance, the changes didn't seem revolutionary. The government allowed private businesses to operate more freely. Farmers could sell surplus crops. Foreign investors were invited to enter the country. Trade barriers slowly came down. But together, these reforms completely transformed Vietnam's economy. For the first time in decades, entrepreneurs had an incentive to build companies. Farmers increased production because they could actually profit from their work. International businesses started looking at Vietnam as a place full of opportunity instead of risk. The results didn't happen overnight. Economic miracles rarely do. But year after year, the country became more productive. Millions of people escaped poverty. Exports increased. New industries emerged. And Vietnam quietly began laying the foundation for something much bigger. Still, none of this explains why some of the world's largest corporations suddenly became obsessed with investing there. Because Vietnam wasn't the only country offering low wages. So why did billions of dollars start flowing into this one? The answer begins with another country: China. Chapter 2: China's success created Vietnam's opportunity. For more than 30 years, China was known as the factory of the world. From smartphones and laptops to shoes, furniture, and toys, an enormous share of the products used every day were manufactured there. Companies loved China for one simple reason: it was incredibly efficient. Factories had access to skilled workers, modern ports, reliable infrastructure, and one of the largest labor forces on Earth. But success came with a price. As China's economy grew richer, wages began to rise. Factory workers expected higher salaries. Land became more expensive. Environmental regulations became stricter. Producing goods in China was no longer as cheap as it had been 20 years earlier. Then another problem emerged. Trade tensions between the United States and China created uncertainty for multinational companies. Executives began asking an uncomfortable question: What happens if we rely too heavily on one country? A single political conflict, a new tariff, or a disruption in global trade could suddenly make production far more expensive. Businesses realized they needed a backup plan. Economists gave a name: the China Plus One strategy. Instead of moving all production out of China, companies would keep many factories there while expanding into another country. And one nation quickly stood out from the rest: Vietnam. Its workforce was young. Its wages were competitive. Its government actively welcomed foreign investment. Its location, right next to China, made it easy for companies to shift part of their supply chains without starting from zero. Soon, billions of dollars began pouring into the country. Factories producing electronics, clothing, furniture, and consumer goods appeared across Vietnam. Some of the biggest names in global manufacturing invested heavily. Among them was Samsung. Today, the South Korean technology giant manufactures a significant share of its smartphones in Vietnam, employing tens of thousands of workers and turning the country into one of the world's largest electronics exporters. And Samsung wasn't alone. As more companies arrived, something remarkable happened. Every new factory attracted suppliers. Those suppliers attracted logistics companies. The logistics companies created demand for better roads, ports, and airports. Entire industrial regions expanded at breathtaking speed. It became a cycle that fed itself. More investment created more jobs. More jobs created higher incomes. Higher incomes boosted domestic consumption. That encouraged even more investment. It looked like Vietnam had discovered the perfect formula for long-term prosperity. But appearances can be deceiving, because hidden beneath this incredible success story is one number that worries economists around the world. A number that could determine whether Vietnam becomes one of Asia's richest nations, or whether this entire economic miracle eventually begins to slow down. And that number is far more important than GDP. Chapter 3: The Hidden Engine of Growth. That number economists worry about is something most people never think about. It's not GDP. It's not exports. It's not even investment levels. It's dependence. Because while Vietnam's growth looks impressive on the surface, a huge part of it is powered by foreign companies. Factories don't just bring money into the country. They also bring control over what gets produced, how it gets produced, and where profits ultimately go. Take a closer look at Vietnam's export numbers, and a surprising pattern appears. A massive share of its economy is tied to electronics and textiles. And in both sectors, the biggest brands are not Vietnamese. They are global corporations using Vietnam as a production base. This creates a strange situation. On paper, Vietnam is booming, but in reality, a large part of value is created elsewhere. This doesn't mean the growth is fake, but it does mean something important. Vietnam is rising fast, but not fully in control of its own rise. And that raises a difficult question. What happens if those companies decide to leave? Here's what most people miss about Vietnam's rise. Its success didn't come from independence. It came from integration, from being deeply connected to global corporations, global trade, and global demand. And that is the twist. The very thing that made Vietnam rich could also be what keeps it from becoming truly independent economically, because a country can grow very fast without ever fully controlling its own growth. So the real question isn't whether Vietnam is getting rich. It clearly is. The real question is, who will capture the most value from that wealth in the long run? Vietnam, or the global system around it? And the answer to that question is still being written. Right now, conclusion, what do you think? Is Vietnam on its way to becoming one of Asia's next economic powerhouses? Or is it simply the latest chapter in a global supply chain that could shift again in the future? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Atlas Aura for more deep dives into geography, economics, history, and the future of our world. See you in the next one.